Get ready for Fast Talk, the show for fast people who have something to say, with your host, Paul Ellis.
Welcome. My name is Paul Ellis. Welcome to Fast Talk. The 20th century has had its share of notables and attention getters. Every nationality and political ideal has produced some sort of group to champion its cause. Certainly one of the most unexpected groups to be represented by a militant radical organization is the world's Jewish community. To explain the hows and whys of the Jewish Defense League, I have with me tonight the one Rabbi Meir Kahane. Rabbi, welcome. I want to ask you, the JDL exists basically because anti-Semitism exists. And what I want to know is, why does everybody hate the Jews? I think that's a real good place to start.
I think that if a rational person starts to understand why people hate Jews, he'd better back up. It isn't a rational thing, it's an irrational thing. And I don't think much about it. Some people hate Jews because they're capitalists, some because they're communists, some because they're pushing, some because they don't want to get involved with other people. I think that there is an irrationalism about it. It's not a religious hatred, it's not a racial hatred. At times it is, at times it isn't. I just know one thing. It exists. And we're not about to let it do to us what it did to us 40 years ago.
40 years ago being Germany, World War II, and Nazi Hitler.
Right, and the slaughter of 6 million Jews. That is not going to happen again, certainly not in the manner that it happened the last time, with the huge majority of Jews going quietly. That will never happen again.
The JDL is designed to make sure that doesn't happen.
We want to change the image of the Jew in the minds of the Jew hater. Jews for the most part have a very good image, and that's bad. I would rather have a bad image if that's what saves Jews. The Jew is the one that's most easily pushed around. That's the kind of image that we have. I don't want to be pushed around. I don't want to be loved. We have this tremendous need to be loved. I don't want love. I want respect. And I understand full well that the only way that we'll ever get respect is by having self-respect.
So the image of the passive Jew, the image we've had a long time is the passive Jew. We were talking about beating up, as opposed to beating up Gino or beating up some black, people would rather beat up Moshe. He's an easier target.
Right.
It's a passive image. So
right.
It's self-perpetuating then.
Exactly right. And I think that that image is something which is not the image of the old Jew. The old Jew is the Bible Jew.
Right.
And the Bible Jew was not that kind of a person. He was a fighter, a warrior. He was one who, as I've always said, it may indeed be the vision and the dream to have the nations beat their swords into plowshares. But if he has a sword, I don't want a plowshare. And Jews in the Bible had swords and used them. And the Maccabees did not throw flowers at the Greeks. And the same Jewish leaders, those Jewish leaders of our time, those dwarfs, those incredible people who would not know Judaism if they fell over it, who will celebrate a Hanukkah and at the same time condemn a JDL, would be people who, if the Maccabees lived now, would have condemned the Maccabees.
You're talking about the Jewish, you use the term Jewish establishment, you're talking about the Jewish leaders of our time.
Yes,
so this
the
is
establishment, right.
This is not a generation of the old-time Jew, the old world Jew. This is something relatively new, post-World War II.
No, this is a generation of people. The Jewish leader in this country is chosen not for his Jewishness, not for his depth of Jewishness, but for his money. And obviously, because he has money and status, it is to his interest to play down any threat. And therefore, he tells Jews there is no threat. But there is a threat, and a very, very grave one. And it's not the number of Nazis that there are in this country which is the real question. It's the number of potential Nazis. And they number in the tens of millions all of the nervous and worried and frightened and insecure people in this country who grow more insecure daily as the economic system here totters.
So Hitler had 12 Nazis and millions of potential Nazis.
Exactly.
And built an entire movement and an entire massacre based on potential.
Right.
We will be right back in a minute. We have a short break. We'll be back to talk more about this.
Portraits of Fast Talk guests by Richmond Jones, 212-684-2297.
I'm Paul Ellis, and you'll see me here talking to the most outrageous opinion makers of today. I have to listen to this every week, but we all have to live with it. So what I need are your opinions. I need to know what you're thinking, who your favorite fast talkers are, and what you'd say to them if they were in your living room. So send me your opinions. Letters, postcards, videotapes, audio tapes, phone calls, even photographs. Send us your opinion and we'll air it. Because in the world of fast talk, the only opinion that really counts is your own. Send us your opinions and we'll send you a free bumper sticker. That's Fast Talk, 57 Main Street, Suite 23, Hackensack, New Jersey, 07601. Or give us a call at 212-532-2925. Welcome back. Our guest today is Meir Kahane of the Jewish Defense League, and we're talking about anti-Semitism, the Jewish people, etc. The one thing I have a question about is, in your book, the assimilation of Jews in America, and we were talking earlier about assimilation of Jews worldwide. Mm-hmm. This poses some sort of a threat to Judaism.
Certainly. I think that Jews, in a sense, die in one of two ways: through the chimneys of Auschwitz and through intermarriage and assimilation. I see no great difference for the Jewish people as such if they lose their children this way or that way. One of the things that JDL has stood for, and which is obvious to most people, is Jewish power. The other aspect, which is not so well known, is Jewish pride and identity. And those are the things that we do more than the Jewish power aspect, except that the news media, of course, never focuses on that because that has no drama to it.
Right. Well, pride stems from, in some senses, someone to look up to.
Of course.
A hero.
True.
Most of the heroes in America that I've had have not been Jewish heroes.
Of course not. And I think that in great measure it's because Jewish heroes are people of violence and anathema to the Jewish leadership. For example, every Jewish youngster, when JDO started, which was in the late 60s, had his Jewish heroes: Ho Chi Minh, Fidel Castro, Che.
Aldrich Cleaver.
Jews didn't know if they were blacks or Chicanos or lettuce or grapes. I mean, they were fighting for all these incredible Jewish causes. Well, no one ever told them about the fact that the Irgun was a Jewish freedom movement in Israel, whose members were hanged by the imperialist British.
Well, Jewish heroes, or the Jewish image that we have after the war, as opposed to the war, are people who passively went to gas chambers. We're never told about people who fought against that.
That's quite
particularly
true.
In Hebrew schools.
That's quite true, because when the Irgun was fighting in the late 40s, they were condemned by the same Jewish leaders that are around now, the same Jewish groups. I remember the B'nai B'rith and the Jewish Congress and the Jewish Committee and all the rest of these real losers. And if you want to know what they said about Begin in the 1940s, just listen to what they say about Meir Kahane now. It's the same thing. It's the same
To
syndrome.
what do they expect to achieve by that? Just don't offend?
Yes.
Let's not offend, let's
Right.
not hurt
They
anybody's
are,
feelings?
They are moved by one particular yardstick, and that is, if we do this or if we don't do this, if we say this or don't say this, what will the Gentiles say? That's what obsesses them. And I couldn't care less, because if he's a decent Gentile, he'll understand. And if he isn't decent, who cares what he says?
Yeah, it doesn't matter if you offend him anyway.
Exactly right.
The violence that has become attributed to you and your organization seems...
It's not a question of attributed. We are a violent group.
Okay,
yeah,
you're a violent
let's,
group. Okay.
Let's call the baby by its name. You know,
All
yeah,
right.
we're a violent group.
Isn't
yes.
that somehow counter to the peace-achieving goals that have been attributed to Jews? The Jewish community has been a leader in peace, or it's been called a leader in peace.
Well, of course. I mean, who doesn't want peace?
Uh-huh.
But I would venture to say that every Jew cheered the Allied bombers that were bombing Dresden and Cologne during World War II. I mean, I want peace, but not at the price of being dead. Now, being dead is a very, very peaceful thing. Mm-hmm. When people tell me, don't sink to their level, well, I would rather sink to that level than sink 6 feet below.
Okay.
So, of course, I want peace. And when he'll give me peace, then he'll have peace. But until then, he'll have what he gives me.
Now, there's a movement that's grown in this country, subliminally bigger and bigger all the time. I saw this in the paper the other day. People who actually say that the killing of Jews, concentration camps, death camps, did not exist, that they were made, it's propaganda to get sympathy for Israel.
Yes.
And that's growing. They're getting more reputable people every day.
Yes. That doesn't bother me, because I really don't care about that. What bothers me much more is those Jews that say that it's those Jews who don't say that it didn't happen, but who say that it can never happen again. That's what bothers me. I don't care if some anti-Semite, if some Jew hater says that the Holocaust or the slaughter of Jews never happened. I don't care. What bothers me is when I hear Jewish leaders say what happened once could never happen here. It could. It could.
And, well, anti-Semitism has been, since World War II, politely put away, politely put aside. People aren't as blatant about it. Reaching the 20th century, the end of the 20th century, there aren't going to be any people left who were there during World War II, were in Germany. It's going to be relegated to history. Names like the Holocaust will be something up for debate.
Mm-hmm.
What's the solution to that? Where do we go with that?
I think that the answer to Jew hatred, and this is my answer, and it's always been, the long-range answer is only one. Every Jew should live in his own country, in Israel. And I say that, and I cannot implore Jews too strongly to realize that ultimately the fate of Jews in any country is the same thing. We have our own country today. Let's go live there and build up a strong and powerful country. In the short run, there has to be a group such as JDL, which doesn't pick at Nazis. First of all, you don't ignore Nazis, and you don't pick at Nazis. You step on Nazis. And that's what has to be done now.
Going to Israel then would be to set up a religious nation.
Well, obviously
not the Israel we have. You're talking about another type of Israel.
Obviously that's what I would want. But even for those Jews that don't want that, at least go there and save themselves and have their children grow up as Jews, and both in body and in soul. Now, obviously I would want a different kind of Israel than exists now. What you have now is a kind of a Hebrew-speaking Greece. I think that what you have now is a Sabra, an Israeli-born Jew, who looks upon himself not as a Jew, but as an Israeli. And that's a tragedy.
So they are as assimilated over there in Israel, assimilated to Israeli, as we would be assimilated to American, or somebody might be assimilated in another country.
Right, right. And I think that the thing that makes them Jewish, despite what they want, is the Arab. And if peace should break out, you would see the kind of intermarriage and assimilation there that you see here. There's a tremendous need to make the state of Israel Jewish again. And being Jewish, in the long run, if you don't want Jewish to be some racist concept, being Jewish and being different has got to be based upon Judaism.
We will be back in a short moment for some more discussion. We'll be right back.
Hello, my name is Paul Ellis, and this is Fast Talk.
Join me every week. Meet the world's most outspoken and outrageous people. Watch Fast Talk. Hear what the supposed opinion makers are saying. Listen to Fast Talk. See that the best satire is often reality.
The Fast Talk fan club wants you. Register now. Send me your name and address, and we'll send you a Fast Talk bumper sticker free. And we'll keep you informed on the latest in Fast Talk. Become a member now, and you can order this t-shirt at the special price of $6. Take advantage of the Fast Talk fan club, and you can get the shirt off my back. To get your free bumper sticker and join the fan club, write to us at Fast Talk, 57 Main Street, Suite 23, Hackensack, New Jersey, 07601, or call us now at 212-532-2925, and you can use your Visa and MasterCharge to order my shirt.
Join me next time for Fast Talk with the Imperial Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, Dale Roish, as he tells us about the inside stories and workings of the Ku Klux Klan. Welcome back. We'll have some more discussion with Rabbi Meir Kahane. Rabbi, I have a question. What it sounds like, I read your book, and it almost sounds like a them or us situation, an isolationist kind of attitude. We'll go to Israel, stay there. Setting up almost a place where, in my opinion, where you could find Jews and get rid of them, come up with a final solution. Is that?
You know, first of all, I don't see why, if I say that Jews should live in Israel, people think that that's an escape. I mean, how come most English people live in England? I mean, how come every normal people wants to live in his own country? First of all, I want to be there because I want to be the master of my own fate. It is not normal to be a minority. It is not normal. I don't care whether you're Jewish, black, green, polka dot, I don't care what you are. It's not normal. Every people has got to live in its own home. When you're a minority, you're filled with all kinds of fears and insecurities and neuroses and psychoses. And you look around at Jews and, my God, I mean, there it is. Secondly, the Jewish people, and I say this as a rabbi, and I believe I'm a real rabbi, not a temple rabbi with his $60,000 a year, not counting weddings, funerals, unveilings, and bar mitzvahs. And I think that being a rabbi starts off with having deep faith in a real God. The state of Israel is not an ordinary country. A people doesn't wander the earth for 2,000 years, suffering what we've suffered, and returns after 2,000 years from 100 different lands to its own country and wins wars in 6 days. That doesn't just happen. The state of Israel is God's hand. It will never go under, never.
So you believe in the literal biblical interpretation of what Israel is?
Of course,
Literally.
Of course. If I didn't, I wouldn't be a rabbi. And I can't believe that there is a single rabbi that doesn't believe in that. If he doesn't, he isn't a rabbi. Let him go out and work.
So then you're saying what you believe is that by all Jews returning to Israel, then we will have the Messiah will return. We're going to build the temple. We'll have a religious nation in Israel.
Yes, and I think that all those young Jews who are out there lost and searching for God knows what they're searching for, but hungry and thirsty for something meaningful. Those young Jews who are victims of their parents who who live on the island or in the valley. You know, Jews always live in a place that starts with a definite article. And those parents that gave them everything except the most important thing, an identity, those kids, I think, are much more open to this kind of a thing that I'm saying than their temple parents are.
Isn't that happening, though, to religion across the board? People falling aside from Catholicism, falling off. I mean, you find a lot of Episcopalians who are now Hare Krishnas, a lot of Catholics who are now Moonies.
That's true. Sure.
A general fall of the Western culture?
Sure. Jews are like all other people, except a little more so. So that, of course, this is the malaise of our age.
Jews are like other people, only a little more so.
Right,
What's the little more so?
You know, because you have to see, Jews may be 2% of the populace of this country, and yet way out of proportion to those numbers, they were in the anti-war movement, or they were in the civil rights movement, or in the Hare Krishna movement, or in the Moonies, or in the Sons, you know, whatever else they go to. So Jews are like other people, searching, but somehow they're always more so. And I wish they would stop working so hard. Just go back. If these people would just go back and find Judaism the way it was meant to be, not in their temple. I mean, God was last seen fleeing from every temple on the island. I mean, Judaism, the way it was meant to be, really.
Which is the Orthodox training.
But, yes, but, and I say this to you too, and I say this openly, don't think that Orthodox rabbis like me any more than non-Orthodox rabbis.
No, that's what I was going to say.
Because the average Orthodox Jew is not a religious Jew either. He's a practitioner of all kinds of rituals. A ritual has to be kept, of course, but it has to grow from a deep, deep faith inside a person. And the average Orthodox Jew is as irreligious, really, as anyone else.
You changed the subject a bit. You presently live in Israel.
Yes.
On the West Bank.
Right, in Hebron.
This is the part of the country they want to give back?
Well,
that's being screamed to give back?
Yes, yes.
Part of the deal?
I would venture to say that there's not the slightest chance. You have 25,000 Jewish settlers there that are really raging tigers. There's no way that that's going.
So these are a better example, these 25,000 are a better example of the Jew you would like to see living in Israel.
Right, that's the old Jew of the Bible.
That's the Maccabee.
Those are the idealists. Those are the ones that have given up a city for an agricultural life, for a settlement, starting with a tent or a trailer. Those are the people that really feel it still.
Are they immigrants to Israel?
All kinds of people. No, they're mostly Sabras, but a lot of
But now Israel's been there long enough to have a whole generation of its own.
That's true, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, sure. A majority now is native born, yeah, sure.
From all over the world, bringing different cultures.
Everywhere. It's an incredible melting
We were talking about this before we came on the air. Israel has no oil, had no oil. It did for a short time.
Right.
It was a desert.
Right.
Who needs it then? Why not just give it to somebody and let them have it?
Well,
it produces nothing.
You know.
Or did at that time.
I don't know why they want it, but I know why I want it. It's home. That's my home. And my home may not be as nice as the home in Great Neck or Greater Neck or Greatest Neck, but it's my home, and I want it. And everyone has a right to his or her home. And I don't begrudge the Arabs any one of their 22 countries, of their 22 homes. God bless them all, but I want mine. I don't want two homes, but I don't want any less than my one home.
You have to run in this, and it comes to my mind. My home has been America.
Yes.
My family is 5 and 8 generations here.
Mm-hmm.
You have to run that with, in particularly other countries, England, France. There have to be people who are even more entrenched, Jews that are more entrenched in their home. How do you get over that America's my home and Israel's my home? I mean, there's almost a conflict there.
No, this is your house. Israel's your home. And I think that the Jew lived in Germany a lot longer than the Ellises lived in America. And it happened. And they couldn't believe that it could ever happen. They didn't believe it was happening as it was happening. I can only plead with Jews out there to realize that the American Jew has lived in this country a very short time, really a short time, 250, 300 years, and really the overwhelming numbers just came in 150 years ago. it can happen.
It can happen here.
Oh, yes.
Well, we see organizations getting Skokie. I mean, gave
Yes.
the Nazis the great exposure that they've gotten. I'm sure that did more for them than...
No question about it. That was a great, great error. And I say it again, you don't ignore Nazis, nor do you pick at them and thus give them all that tremendous coverage. You quietly send your pros in, and you make sure that they can't walk. That's how they don't march.
They don't march because they can't walk.
Right.
We were talking before about the falling away generally of everybody.
Everybody.
The moral majority seems to be making plays with that, making a
Yes.
great ground on the fact that people have fallen away and offering
Right.
something. Have you ever been compared to the Jewish moral majority? I mean...
No, no. They make me nervous.
They make you nervous?
Oh, yes.
In
I
what
don't,
sense?
I don't like Farwell. I think that when Begin honored Farwell, it was a great mistake. Farwell is basically interested in one thing only, and that is a Christian country, which is his
Doesn't
right.
Jerry Falwell believe that, I mean, he made a statement, he supports Israel, Jews should go to Israel.
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
Doesn't he eventually believe that Jews returning to Israel will bring the resurrection of...
That's quite true. That's quite true, but he makes me nervous anyhow. He's not the kind of a person. He is a missionary, essentially so, and I understand him, but that doesn't mean that I have to like it. He believes that Israel should be Jewish because eventually all the Jews will become Christians.
We'll all convert once we're there.
Certainly, and while we're here, he's trying to make Jews Christians here too. I mean, they can.
There's an ad runs in a Voice every week, Jews for Jesus,
Right,
in the back of the Village
right.
Voice, and my father gets very angry.
And that's funded by the Baptists. Now, I wish Christians would spend their time being good Christians and leave us alone. We don't go bargain hunting for Christians. Let Christians be good Christians and leave us be good Jews, and maybe the world will be a safer place and a better place. Don't go. I don't like people that try and snatch my soul either through violence or through any other means.
You've had some criticism because the kind of person who joins JDL. It's not generally the doctor, lawyer, my son, the lawyer, Jew.
No,
It's been a poor, lower middle class, kids looking for,
Yes.
predominantly young.
Sure, sure.
Doesn't everybody want to join something?
Certainly, certainly. But the thing is that the doctor and lawyer wants to join the country club, and I'd rather have him join JDL. Sure, there are poor Jews. You know, when you mention to Gentiles that there are poor Jews in New York City, well, they look at you. What are you, crazy?
Right, they look like you're nuts. I mean,
Well,
Jews
there
are not
are
poor.
200,000.
Get ready for Fast Talk, the show for fast people who have something to say, with your host, Paul Ellis.
Hello, my name is Paul Ellis, and this is Fast Talk. This week we're bringing back one of our favorite guests. He's a favorite of mine because at whatever gathering, whether it's family or friends, the mere mention of what he has to say prompts violent conversations. Everybody has an opinion on Rush Harp. By his own definition, our guest is an assassinologist. By his actions, he's nothing less than a dedicated investigator. To continue our conversations about assassinations and the military takeover of where else but the US of A, we have one Rush Harp. Hi,
Thank
Rush.
you. Hi, Paul.
The last time you were here, we talked about John F. Kennedy's assassination.
Right.
And how it was the first step in a military coup in this country. That's a bold statement. What do you mean by a military coup?
Well, it's called coup d'etat. It's a French statement. It means with a quick zoop, you take over the state. D'etat is the estate. And you take over the whole country. And it's beautifully timed, and it happened at 12:30 noon, and exactly at 12:30 noon, every telephone in Washington, D.C. went dead, and exactly at 12:30, or a minute ahead of time, the motorcycle microphone got turned on so as to keep them from saying, hey, somebody shot the president, stop all exits, etc. Everything was beautifully organized. 2 minutes before he was shot, there was a man came down and had a fit on the green, and everybody came down to see him and cleared the grassy knoll so that the sharpshooter would have a clear spot.
All strategically planned by?
All beautifully by the power control group, the DOD, the CIA. I'm sorry to say the Secret Service was in on it, and the FBI was in on it, and also was the Dallas Police Force was in on it.
What's happened since?
What's happened since?
We've had 20 years and we've had a lot of assassinations. I mean, if you ran by...
Well, they're running a simple system. What they do is they kill the person that they want to get rid of, and they throw in as a red herring the patsy. They blame everything on the patsy, and then you hear lots of publicity about the patsy, and he's put in jail or he's murdered or something, and he's gotten rid of. And they go on to the next thing. It's a simple system.
This is basically kind of the formula, the Lee Oswald formula.
The patsy. He said, I'm a patsy. I didn't kill anyone. And he was too smart, so they killed him right away.
So now we have had an attempt on the present president's life.
Oh, yeah, it's very obvious.
Another similar form.
Oh, sure, lone nut, of course. And they're very clever. They gave him a .22, which didn't sound like a real serious assassination attempt. The next attempt will be probably done with high-powered automatic weapons from the Libyan assassins. And, of course, they'll shoot the president and get rubbed out themselves, or escape, or something like that. It's so obvious. It's the simple old solution. The caveman likes the blonde that the guy next door has got, so he waits for him and bop him on the head and drags the blonde back to his part.
The Kennedy assassination has been followed, I started to say before, we've had 20 years of a number of assassinations.
Yeah.
Your T-shirt right here says JFK, RFK, MLK, MJK, and it goes on. We have many, many more, right up to Sadat, the Pope, etc.
Yes.
If you heard this without the names of the people, it sounded like some sort of Latin American country.
Sure. It's human beings, and it's military thinking, and it's just so obvious to once you get into the research of it, because you find these things out. You know that something's wrong. Like I think I told you on the last program, I knew something was wrong when somebody confused a Mauser with a Carcano. I mean, no way could you confuse them.
Well, just recently, Hinckley, you have a letter in your most recent thing that Hinckley shot a 6-shooter with 7 bullets.
Yes, 7 shots out of his 6-shot revolver, like Sirhan had 11 bullets in his 8-shot revolver. It happens in the movies, it happens in assassinations. This is a pretty clear-cut case because we have it on the tapes and the TV tapes were on TV. NBC, ABC, and CBS all have 7 shots coming out of the 6-shot revolver. Most interesting, fast reloading.
There's no mention of that. Nobody mentions it.
Well, Judy Woodruff and Leslie Stahl mentioned it when it happened. Judy Woodruff said, oh, there were shots coming from above, and 8.5 seconds, I understand. That was the last she was seen on the tube for the day. And I think Leslie may have repeated it once, shots from above. If any of you want to haul out the April 13th issue of Time magazine, you'll see the picture taken with a wide-angle lens showing what appears to be the assassin hiding up above Hinckley. And there he is, hiding behind the bars. And the next picture is printed on the same picture. They cropped that top off.
Took him out.
Yeah, they took him out.
So Hinckley, like Oswald, is a patsy, set up.
Yeah, well, he's better than Oswald because he's been trained, mentally set up to do the shooting. He's similar to the guy that killed my friend Allard Lowenstein and the guy that shot John Lennon. The guy who shot John Lennon said, I've just shot John Lennon and I don't know why because I like the guy. These are mind-controlled assassins. It's the latest hit. It's great. It's just ideal.
It's a technique that they've used.
Yeah. The older technique was the Manchurian Candidate, which was Sirhan Bishop Sirhan, who said, I don't remember anything. Take me back. And they wouldn't take him back, of course.
Okay, we'll be back after a brief message.
Portraits of Fast Talk guests by Richmond Jones, 212-684-2297.
I'm Paul Ellis, and you'll see me here talking to the most outrageous opinion makers of today. I have to listen to this every week, but we all have to live with it. So what I need are your opinions. I need to know what you're thinking, who your favorite fast talkers are, and what you'd say to them if they were in your living room. So send me your opinions. Letters, postcards, videotapes, audio tapes, phone calls, even photographs. Send us your opinion and we'll air it. Because in the world of fast talk, the only opinion that really counts is your own. Send us your opinions and we'll send you a free bumper sticker. That's Fast Talk, 57 Main Street, Suite 23, Hackensack, New Jersey, 07601. Or give us a call at 212-532-2925. Welcome back. My guest this evening is Rush Harp, assassinologist. We were just talking about John Lennon's assassination, and you have written a letter that includes a hit list of the arts.
Yeah, I sent that into the Woodstock Times in Woodstock, New York. It came to me because someone who was involved in the dirty trick operation ratted on them and sent this letter out, and it was distributed to quite a few places, and I happened to get a copy of it, and so I literally copycatted the letter and sent it to the paper.
So this is a copy of a letter that was sent by someone involved in this whole operation.
Right, and they realized the dirty trick that was happening, and they decided to let it out into the world, but since they have wives and children and everything else, and they don't want to get rubbed out themselves,
they let you do it.
Yeah, they let me do it.
Interesting names on here. We have Pete Seeger, Ellen Stewart, Julian Beck,
yep.
Harry Chapin. Harry Chapin's no longer with us.
I knew he was murdered when I read about the type of death, because a friend of mine got this same treatment. It's a special chemical they put on the steering wheel of the car. So when you touch it, it soaks through your skin, and you have what appears to be a heart attack, and you pass out. And if you're driving the car at that time, the chances of death are very high.
But Harry Chapin had at least it was reported, had a bad driving record.
Oh, you read the controlled press, my dear boy. Were you reading the New York Times, the New York Post, the Daily News, the Washington Post, the NEAP or UPI? These are controlled by the Central Intelligence Agency. You're not getting the truth, young man.
Why Harry Chapin? Why these people?
Well, Harry Chapin was, they want to rub out everybody that's in the arts for peace and love. In fact, after this happened, I met up with a friend of mine I hadn't seen in 12 years. His name was Juma. He's a black drummer, and he was with Jimi Hendrix in England. He said there was a CIA agent in the form of an English woman who had to do with Jimmy's death. Jimi Hendrix was killed.
There's always been talk of Lenny Bruce having been...
Of course. These people are tremendously influential with young people. And when you're into love and life and no war and peace, they have to be smudged, man. They are bad news for the military.
Well, if what you say is true, the military takeover of the United States in the form of Mr. Haig and Mr. Bush and Ronald Reagan, I would imagine that getting rid of John Lennon, a potential leader, before he even leads anything.
Right, well, they knew he was coming back out of retirement and was going to do a real number, and a lot of kids really loved this guy. My own son, who's 29, called me up. He was crying because he was about 6 blocks away when Lennon was killed. And my friend Allard Lowenstein, strangely enough, died on the Ides of March along with Caesar. They rubbed him out, same type of thing. And even then, Sweeney, the man who shot Lowenstein, he said, they put something in my teeth or in my scalp to bug me. He said, I hear voices in my head. Now, he was a sweetheart of a guy. He was a friend of Allard's. Huh. They set him up that way because you see the interesting coincidence is that he was married to Mary King, who's still in the White House, and she married Peter Bourne. I'm sure some of you people on the boob tube here heard of Peter Bourne. He was caught hanky-pankying with ludes or some form of drug in the White House and got fired.
Right.
Well, he was, I believe, head of mind control in Vietnam.
Now, I'd like you also wrote a letter or an article that I have in the Woodstock Times. Woodstock is where you live, and that's why it shows up in this paper, I guess.
That's where the action is.
About the actual mechanizations of this kind of thing, how one gets his information and how...
Very interesting, yes. We got some new information on that. I meant to bring it down. In fact, I left it at my aunt's house. Mae Brussel has come up with a new little piece on this hit. One of the murderers called Mae Brussel and told her that he was quitting because he learned from her what he was doing. He said, Mae, we work on a need to know, and you tell us how and why. That's a direct quotation. This murderer was very similar to the guy that you saw in 3 Days of the Condor. He's completely indifferent. He's doing his job. He's killing people he's told to kill, but he doesn't know who they are or what they are. He doesn't care.
And how does he get his information? How does he proceed down the path?
CIA decides to kill someone. So they call a professor at Brigham Young University in Salt Lake City, and he in turn calls a whorehouse in Chicago. And someone calls in and said, is Sylvia on this week? And they say, no, Sylvia's in Denver. Won't be back for a week. So this guy heads, and they may give him also a letter in the alphabet like G and a small number. And Sylvia, you can get her at G27. So he goes to Denver, and the first thing he does is goes to the main post office and gets a letter in his name, or his nom de plume. In fact, our killer was named King. That was his nom de plume. And incidentally, one of the people he killed had a middle name named King.
Really?
Yeah, William King Harvey was the last guy he killed he was just about to testify before the Senate Church Committee.
He went out and was assigned this assignment. Now
He
he's
gave him a
left.
fake heart attack.
He's left, and he's giving you information on how it's done.
Yeah, well, he quit. He got quite mad because they listened in on, first of all, he quit, and second of all, they heard him talking to Mae Brussel on her tapped telephone,
Right.
and they sent out a murder team to get him and cut his throat. And he really lost his temper, and he called up and gave us the whole poop.
I would guess you would lose your temper if you became one of the
Well, interesting.
one of the targets of your own team.
Yeah, well,
would
they
tend to get
kill-
you a little angry.
They kill anybody they don't need anymore. Like most of the assassins at Dealey Plaza were dumped into the Gulf of Mexico that day. They blew up the plane they were getting away with, and they fed them to the sharks.
And this goes on, and you talk about Guyana, Jamestown, Guyana being part of all
man,
this.
all of these things are
And these are all just to get
right. Just to keep the
Control of the
war
government.
going and keep everything hot in the military.
no Vietnam, we need a new war.
Yeah, we need one in El Salvador, and that's getting very unpopular with the people, and so they may shift to Libya. And what better thing is to set up a bunch of Libyans to come in and knock off the president, and then say, hey, we got to have war with Libya. They killed our president, of course. And they failed on the last attempt, but I think I mentioned that
Well, that's been done before.
7 shots in his
history
revolver.
bears that it's been done before. We went to war
It doesn't
with...
happen to happen all the time. I mean, it's also been done. A little piece of history of New York State is that when the Indians were running things, the women took over, and there was 100 years they didn't have any war at all when the women were running things. That's why I'm looking for the women to take over.
Yeah,
I'd like
you're
to
not the only one who believes that, I'm
Yeah.
sure. John D. Rockefeller, you were very active in that investigation.
Well, I investigated John D. Rockefeller III, and I
Right.
found out it was a murder. And I got that far. I didn't finish the entire investigation, but in the meantime, Nelson got rubbed out.
While you were investigating John D. Rockefeller, Nelson died.
Nelson died conveniently, and if you remember, the comic description was high blood pressure, 70/20.
Right.
But the reality was they knew that the murderer, when he gets his dossier on his victim, like this man got the one on Pat Schroeder, and it tells just what she did, where she went, her children, her mother, or where she traveled to kill her, that's when he quit. And so we saved Pat Schroeder's life. It was rather interesting. What I want to get back to the point, the whorehouse in Chicago has been discovered. Now, Mae Brussel just announced it on her program last month, and the information got through to her. Very interesting, the University of Illinois, somebody took over the books and discovered $600,000 had been poured out into
Out of the University of
prostitution.
Illinois.
Yeah, and it turned out to be Department of Defense funds in a computer thing, and I like the name of it. It was the UD Computer Company. UD is a great name for a whorehouse, I guess. Anyway, $600,000 seemed like a lot of money for screwing around, as Mae Brussel put. And
A
this
lot
is,
of money spent in the whorehouse.
This is probably the house of ill repute that the major switchboard was at, where the murderers and the patsies all called in for their orders, or the orders were called out. We're pretty certain of this. Anyway, that's Mae's theory. And it's very, very interesting to find this out, because we knew sooner or later it would leak.
We being a group of you that investigate.
Well, in this
and
particular case...
Get yourself in a lot of trouble, I would imagine.
Well, this particular murder was Mae Brussel and myself. I happened to join forces with her, and by a strange, tremendous coincidence, with all my friends, I reached Pat Schroeder and called her up and told her about it. And it was due to that I put the sign up,
you
which
saved
you have
her
on the
life.
lawn. Yeah, we stopped the murder team.
We'll be back in a moment after a short message. Hello, my name is Paul Ellis, and this is Fast Talk.
Join me every week. Meet the world's most outspoken and outrageous people. Watch Fast Talk. Hear what the supposed opinion makers are saying. Listen to Fast Talk. See that the best satire is often reality.
The Fast Talk Fan Club wants you. Register now. Send me your name and address, and we'll send you a Fast Talk bumper sticker free. And we'll keep you informed on the latest in Fast Talk. Become a member now, and you can order this T-shirt at the special price of $6. Take advantage of the Fast Talk Fan Club, and you can get the shirt off my back. To get your free bumper sticker and join the fan club, write to us at Fast Talk, 57 Main Street, Suite 23, Hackensack, New Jersey, 07601, or call us now at 212-532-2925, and you can use your Visa and MasterCharge to order my shirt.
Join me next time in Fast Talk with Rabbi Meir Kahane, Radical Rabbi and International Chairman of the Jewish Defense League. Welcome back. Our guest is Rush Harp. We're talking about assassinations since the Kennedy assassination. On your shirt and on your card it mentions JFK, which is John Kennedy, RFK, Robert Kennedy, Martin Luther King. And the last one is MJK, and I think that's the one that everybody has a hard time even trying to figure out who that is.
Well, I put that in as a sleeper, but it turns out that she started with K also, and that's Mary Jo Kopechne. Mary Jo Kopechne was murdered, not particularly, although they were very glad to get rid of her because they also murdered her roommate, who was, I think, Bobby Baker's secretary. But the main reason for killing her is that she was with Mr. Kennedy, Ted Kennedy, that night, Edward Moore Kennedy. And as he drove away, they set it up like a bear trap. I think that's an exact quotation by John Dean in the White House tapes. He said, if Kennedy had only known the bear trap he was walking into. It was set up by what I call the boys, because Nixon had to continue to be the president to keep the war in Vietnam running. So they had to knock everybody out of the way. Later on, they shot Wallace, who was interfering with things, and they took Muskie out of the way, I think, with a fake letter. But the reason for the party at Chappaquiddick, and a friend of mine, it was his cabin, it was Henry Lawrence from Hartsdale, his mother's studio that the party took place at. And one of my best friend's secretaries or assistant was there, Susan Tannenbaum. She worked for Allard Lowenstein. And I know the women at the party just didn't know what happened. Nobody told them what happened. But what did happen was, when Kennedy drove away from the party with Mary Jo Kopechne, the reason that she wanted to be with him alone was that she had a lover in Washington who was going to go overseas. And she wanted Kennedy to use his influence to keep him from going over.
There was really no connection between them other than a friendly business relationship.
Well, she had been Robert Kennedy's top lady and a very good worker. And this was a boiler room conference. All these women were super political workers, and they were there to get ready to run Kennedy for presidency for a four-year lead. Yeah, sure. So the boys were waiting for Kennedy, and they waylaid him. And when he got out of the car, kapow, they slugged him on the mastoid bone, which pretty hard to hurt in an accident because your skull and your shoulder protect it. And he got an enormous bump on top of his head. And as he hit the deck, he saw Mary Jo running away. And they ran after her and caught her, and she turned around and slugged them. With her left hand was bruised the knuckles. And then that's the last thing she could do, because they grabbed her by the nose, and I imagine they used bourbon or something, and poured it in her mouth. And she could only spit out the first mouthful. After that, she has to swallow every mouthful to breathe. So when they got her drunk enough so she was unconscious, they laid her in the back of the car. They drove the car down to the bridge, but they goofed. They got lost on the way to the bridge. And they went, yeah, they went down a cul-de-sac. And I love the name of this guy. His name's Sheriff Look. He stopped. He saw them going down the wrong road, so he got out of his car and waited for them to come back to help them. So he saw both sides of their car untouched, and he also saw the license number, which was L78207. And he remembered L7 and 7, because 7's his lucky number. And he saw there were two people in front and someone or something in the back seat. That was Mary Jo. Then they went whizzing off to the bridge. They got down to the bridge. They lined the car up with the bridge, and they put a stick on the gas pedal, holding it to the floor, propped it up against the seat. They ran a rope out the window, and I imagine one of them was smart enough to say, hey, it may catch the mirror. So they cranked the window up about 1.5 inches, and so it would clear the rear vision mirror. And then they started the motor, they shifted it into drive, and zoom, it went straight off the bridge.
You have some pictures here.
Yeah, one other thing.
Yes.
They smashed in the right side of the car before it went off the bridge with Mary Jo already in the back seat.
How do you know this?
Because something cut the back of her neck and she started to bleed. It's pitch black, she's face down, she's unconscious, nobody knows what's happening. They don't care, they're not looking at her, they're arranging the car to go off the bridge. So she starts to bleed. And when the car goes off the bridge perfectly straight, nobody driving, and the motor is wide open, and you have a high dramatic Oldsmobile, 4-speed automatic transmission, tremendous torque and power. You're burning the tires. When the right rear tire hits the edge of the bridge, it slows down to the speed of the car, and the left rear tire, lightly loaded, goes over the bridge at over 100 miles an hour, and it leaves this interesting streak on the bridge.
Let's make sure we don't.
If you can see this
If you can
streak,
hoist this just a
let's
little
see.
bit more.
Let's see.
Okay.
Is that about right?
Let's
Can you
see.
see that?
Can we put the camera on this so we can see
Anyway, if I can see it.
this? Here we go.
let's
Yeah,
see.
you can see it now.
All right, now this, can you see that streak?
Right
That's
here.
perfectly straight. That's only 1 inch wide. An Oldsmobile, that's 9 inches wide, that board that you see there.
This from
Yeah,
here.
from there to there's
here.
9 inches. That's 1 inch wide streak. It's perfectly straight. If we had a straight edge, you could see that it goes straight. It was taken with a, that's a telescopic view camera. That was the rear wheel going at over 100 miles an hour. And
Because
making
of the
that,
speed of the wheel, it made that narrow
streak.
mark.
And because there was nobody driving, it went perfectly straight off. It's called the camber action of the car. Now the rope catches the rear vision mirror of the car.
It's right here.
See it? And tears off the front bolt as it tears the stick out of the gas pedal. Now, if Kennedy had been climbing out that window, he would have torn off the back bolt if he put his foot on that mirror.
Right.
But the front bolt is torn off because the rope catches it and rips it back, and I'm sure there must have been a dent on the inside of the car.
And
if
this
you look to
damage
it.
that you see in the car was done before that thing went in.
No, the damage was done when the car went off the edge, and the rope caught it and ripped it back, catching the stick and bringing
But
the
the other
stick back.
dents and other things that showed up in the car were done before it even went in the
Well,
window.
the dents on the right, they smashed the windows, which was a mistake. They could have cranked them down. But they wanted to make sure it looked like an accident, or for what reason. They smashed the right side of the car, which has no reason to be smashed. The front's right, and the windshield's right, and the top is right, but the right-hand side shouldn't be
So
smashed.
am I safe in assuming that this was done because you just couldn't kill another Kennedy? It would
That's
kind
right.
of look
It would begin to
pretty
look
funky
suspicious.
if you killed another Kennedy.
Shoot a
so
third, fourth Kennedy.
Now, why doesn't
Well, they,
Ted Kennedy say? I mean, he wasn't in
said,
the car.
He said that morning, he said, when I fully realized what happened, I reported immediately to the police. And that was 8.5 hours later. Now, one of my friends who was going to rewrite a book that we did on it, he said, Rush, I could disbelieve everything you say except one thing. That Kennedy could chit-chat about the regatta with his neighbors for half an hour in the morning. It's impossible if he had known she was underwater. And he is now admitting to the fact that he drove her off the bridge, and he made up a lie because none of his figures match what really happened. Time is wrong because Sheriff Look they didn't know about until the inquisition. He made until the investigation. They didn't know the Sheriff Look had met the car. So he made up a story leaving Sheriff Look out of it.
Why would he make up the story? For what reason?
There are 16 Kennedy kids they'll kill at random if he tells the truth. Now
You believe he's actually been threatened?
I
at that
believe
point?
he's been threatened because of two things. One, we know positively that Jackie Onassis was threatened. They said both her kids would be killed in a week. This is in a book called The Fabulous Jackie Onassis, written by her butler, who listened in on the phone upstairs all the time because he was going to write a book on her anyway. And then the fact that when Kennedy had 5 days to choose yes or no to the presidency for the Democrats, during those 5 days, it's on record that all 16 kids were under heavy guard. And then when he said no, he dropped the guard on the kids. And this is in the record. And
the one thing I found, as I said in our introduction, I go to group parties or whatever, and I mention talking to you. I say, geez, somebody will say something. Robert Ludlum, author, novelist, writes a lot of this kind of stuff, and he inevitably comes up in the conversation, and I follow it with Rush Harp, who does not write novels, speaks the truth, I suppose.
I'm only talking about the truth, that's all.
The one that they question always is Mary Jo Kopechne.
Well, we talked to this diver, you saw the picture of him, and he said she was full of air. She floated to the surface. She had suffocated, and her blouse, due to the cut on the back of her neck, was soaked through the collar in and out, and the back and both arms are soaked with blood. The capillary action of that slash wound was enough, and she lived for several hours in the car. We talked to the embalmers. They said, well, we were told she drowned, and we tried to get the water out of her, and there's nothing in her, about half a teacup. Just the bubbles that came out of her nose and mouth when she floated to the surface were the only water that got into her. She lived about, we figured, 2 hours in the car.
She lived for 2 hours in the car.
Enormous bubbles came up from the car when they pulled it out of the water, and the trunk was dry. Never got a drop of water in it, because the car's upside down, the windows are down, the footwell is up, and she was found in the footwell.
And at this time, where was Edward Kennedy?
Ted Kennedy was unconscious, taken back to his motel room, and told to come out and call the murderers in the morning at the phone booth down by the ferry. And as he said to his neighbors next door, he said, I have to meet Gargan and Markham down by the ferry. And while he was in the phone booth, a man came, or standing next to the phone booth, a man came up and said, "Mr. Kennedy, there was a dead woman found in your car." And that's when he said, "When I fully realized what happened, I reported immediately to the police." He had no knowledge of what happened.
No knowledge at all.
He couldn't, because he had a concussion. He was unconscious. Now, we have another witness who refuses to come forward, who heard Kennedy say, "I thought she got away, I thought she got away." He was so upset at her death. I don't like to call Mr. Kennedy a liar on public television, but this is what happened. This is the truth. We know she didn't drown.
If he's protecting his family, he has good reason to
He says, "I don't know how I got out of the car," and he said, "and I fought the tides and the currents to try to get her out." And of course, we look on the tide chart. There's no tide. It's ebb tide, and the car is sticking out of the water. He could have taken a deep breath, reached down through the window, and pulled her out, because his head would be above the water if he stood next to the car. We have pictures of the car sticking out.
He's in fairly good shape.
Well, he's not that bad shape. Mr.
For
Kennedy,
a politician, he's physical good shape for a politician.
Mr. Kennedy very cleverly put out another story after he found out about Sheriff Look, in which he said that there was another woman with him in the front seat, and that they didn't know Mary Jo was drunk in the back seat, and they drove off just for accidental fun, and they came back and they didn't know about it, and then all of a sudden they realized that she was gone, and they went back to try to save her. And that's the secondary lie, but that doesn't hold water either.
It's certainly done its job. I doubt that Kennedy could really win an office. I think it shows up every time he mentions running for...
Well, my friends in California told me, they said, "Rush, we think that Mr. Kennedy was running for the presidency just to keep press away from Jerry Brown." Because Jerry Brown knows the story, because I sent Allard Lowenstein out there. It's sort of my fault that he was killed anyway, because I gave him the information on the Robert Kennedy case, and he went out to check all my figures and found them to be absolutely right. Brought me back the autopsy picture of Robert Kennedy from Noguchi, who didn't burn his notes, incidentally, as Dr. Humes did. And there it is, 2 shots in the armpit with powder burns, 1 shot in the mastoid bone, powder burns back of the ear. And you may remember that picture of Kennedy on his back, his eyes open. There was a kid kneeling next to him, and the blood was running out from under his ear. He was shot in the mastoid bone, range about ½ an inch. So Allard Lowenstein came back.